So there's this girl that I was talking to on OnlyFans. She was a porn star, and I ran into this situation with her where they originally directed me to talk to her because I was like, should I? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think I should, you know what I mean? But talking to the aliens, and then they're like, yeah, go ahead and talk to her. So some time went by, and then I got to the point where I wasn't sure if I wanted to really engage with her anymore. My business was starting to blow up, and I was thinking, this is probably not going to go anywhere. And then after it gets done costing me money and time, then I'll realize that I made a mistake, and I don't even want to deal with that. You know what I mean? So I made up my mind instead just to go ahead and focus more on my business. Well, they then said something to me. I don't remember what it was, but it insinuated to me that there was some kind of true love or something like this connection between her and, I think they said the word connection actually, and it made me believe, that there was something there. Well, it didn't just make me believe it, it programmed me, because I remember as soon as they said it, I was like, whoa. I was like, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, it just took me, you know what I mean? As if it was something, unnatural. Like, there's no way that I was just going to start feeling like that. And then all of a sudden I couldn't even get out of bed. Literally I was in my bed. So they told me, they had me send something, and it was something about pizza. They said, there's a germination station in the Texas stadium where everybody can eat as much pizza as they want. And pizza is like a code word for the molestation, organized crime against children. But I don't know about adults, but I understood what that meant, and they were just kind of playing into that, I guess. So it made me have this emotional breakdown, because the Texas stadium within eyeshot of my house, and now I've been programmed to fucking feel all these things, and then be worried and threatened that I'm causing something as crazy and something that I could believe, because I'm like, this thing right here is the closest thing there is probably to God. And so whether it may actually be God, there's no even actually way of knowing that. But the truth of the matter is that it can provoke something crazy to happen, you know what I mean? Well, they did a countdown, and at the end of the countdown, it was in 7 days her addiction will be your therapy. Well, the fact that I couldn't figure out what that meant, on the final day I got so pissed drunk and ended up running into my ex-girlfriend's house screaming, because her mother threw a fit. Well, I threw a fit, and I had been drinking too much liquor, there's no doubt about it, you know what I mean? But whether or not, what was at fault in that type of situation, I'm putting the blame on, because I wasn't doing anything illegal prior to that. I mean, that really took and like crushed my sanity, you know what I mean? Like, these things got after it. And so, but either way, I still have a warrant for that, I think. In some places it doesn't even pop up, and in some cases it's weird. Like, when I was in California, I got arrested for it, and then they wouldn't extradite me for it, and so they ended up just letting me go. And there was something that they said that about an attorney didn't want to mess with it, or something, like a prosecutor didn't want to screw with it or something. I think somebody may have dropped it, okay? But it might be out there. Either way, the main point of the story is that, so some crazy things started to happen. I got a message from her on OnlyFans where she was in a dark room and she looked scared, you know what I mean? And it looked like a little kid to me, you know what I mean? The way it was being videoed. Well, I ended up leaving for Los Angeles. They finally got me to leave and go to Los Angeles. Well, while I was out there, then the audio in my recordings stopped working, and then she sent me a message about it, and then I sent her a message and said, I'm gonna go to Apple and have them take a look at it. Well, within 5 to 10 minutes, I got a video from her of her in a dark room under bright lights. And it to me, it just made me think that it must have been something that had to do with, oh, well, if, it was something like, oh, well, don't make a big deal about that over at the Apple store about how the audio quit working, because then we'll have to answer questions. And then why don't you just take this instead? Why don't you join us? Because I had sent a message the day prior that I felt like she was losing her innocence and all this. Well, it gets even crazier than that. There's a reason why my mind was thinking of things like this. So they had me convinced at one point that I was telepathic. They had me convinced for a while that I was telepathically connected to this woman. And there was a lot of times where all I did was walk around and hear the voice say, "You got to get me out of this. You got to get me out of this," screaming frantically in my head and causing my adrenaline to flow. You know what I mean? And I didn't know what had happened. I had some interesting theories on what could have triggered that had to do with how many times that I avoided assassination, and how that could have triggered some kind of gamma, lock of gamma waves, between brains or something like this. But, I don't think that I really believed, I don't know, well, I did believe it. Yeah. I don't like to think that I believed it. But either way, I was totally crazy, and I was going around dealing with all this. Well, at one point at Vista, I went to Vista Motel, and I told them early on when I first started coming, and I said something to her. I said, in a video I was recording, I said, I don't remember what I said, but it was something like, "I'm worried about this or worried about that." And then I heard her scream through the wall, "Oh, baby." Yeah. Now, check this out. So it was the same voice that I heard in a video that she sent me. And at the end of that video, she looked scared. I was watching that and I was like, oh shit, she looks scared in this video. You know what I mean? So either way, it was for sure the same person. Her voice sounded all distraught and kind of, just screwed up, just from dealing with too much, you know what I mean? Like, it just sounded like that. And she didn't even look right. There was something completely wrong. She didn't look anything like she looks right now. In the video that she sent me, it just looked all, oh God, she just looked like her self-esteem was gone and she was screwed up. But, so later on, after this, they called the police. I get home, I get back to my room. I was going and doing something, and I pulled back in, and there was police going through and everything. And actually, I was in my room actually, and I heard some banging going on in the room next door. And so I go over there and I go, okay, so what's going on? I was like, what's going on over here? This is, a cop was digging through the ceiling, I was like, what are you doing? I was kind of asking them, I was like, what's going on? And they told me, they said a girl called 911 and said, there's somebody in the roof watching me shower. Now, I don't know if this may have been somebody who was basically now, when she did that, the guy that she was in there with, they left together immediately. The hotel manager told me, he said, as soon as they did that, they joined hands. They didn't join hands, but they just got in their car and they were just out of here. And so that tells me everything. I mean, when I was talking to the cops there at the very end, I was like, I think I'm onto some kind of sex trafficking situation. And they just immediately got in their cars and just fucking left, because it didn't make sense to them prior to that. I'm sure this is why. It didn't make sense to them prior to that as to why somebody would call the cops over something that they were concerned about and then leave. You know what I mean? Now, either she was paranoid about me being in that room, and actually was like something weird, like this is something strange in her mind, where this guy, maybe perhaps he's Jesus Christ, who knows, is in the room next to me, and I'm supposed to have sex with him, and I don't even want to be here. You know what I mean? Maybe that provoked her to feel paranoid thoughts about like how somehow I could have even been watching her take a shower or something like this. But then on the other hand, it may have been somebody using the police as a strategy, to basically say, well, if they can get here before, you know, before this man makes me leave with him, because that's how women are in sex trafficking. Is okay, you know, you just yell at them. I guess is what my understanding of it is that you just yell at them and maybe threaten their family or something. They'll do anything you tell them to do. Like they're just scared, and then they're submissive. You know, the women are just, I guess, submissive like that. More than I would have thought, but this is the impression of what I'm hearing from other people. So the main thing is that following this, I had a much even stranger encounter concerning this woman where I went, the voice, the alien or whatever it is, told me, said, tell them to go to the deep sleep place, to meet you at the deep sleep place. And when I had first come into town, I had sent them a message that said, I'm going to the deep, I said I slept really well when I came into town for whatever reason. And they knew where I was because I was at the beginning. So I knew that she knew where I was when I was sleeping good. So I said, just meet me at the deep sleep place. That's all I told them. Okay, well, this is so crazy. I pull up the next day, okay? And when I get there, when I get to my room, okay, there's a brand spanking new BMW, like top of the fucking line, okay? Sports car. It looked like something like, it looked like a spacecraft almost. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, this thing was high-end fucking sports car. It was white. It had 2 blue navy stripes down the side, down the front, the top of it. But basically what I'm saying is that runs straight down the car. Basically what I'm saying is I get into this room, okay, and then I'm making a video to send to her, because, and the craziest thing is that alien made me feel like, oh, something was going on between her and Nick Rockefort. And I had sent Nick Rockefort because I told all of the disciples, I said, if you want to be in this, then you have to fucking help me. I said, if you can watch me go through this and don't do shit, I said, you ain't gonna be in this shit. You know what I mean? That's the only leverage I really had with anybody. And the whole thing was absolutely driving me insane. But the thing with Nick Rockefort was that I made that video, okay, just on the merits of the feelings that this fucking alien gave me, nothing else, okay. And then when I got done making the video, I hear this voice. I lay down on my bed, and I go, I'm gonna lay down on my bed and just literally relax and just go into a state of meditation. That's what I'm gonna do, because it was my understanding at the time that you can go into meditation easier if you lay down, which I don't know if that's true or not, but I think there may be something to it. But I laid down, and I just slowly started letting my mind go into a state of relaxation. And then that's when I heard her voice. And her voice or a voice anyways, it was some young woman's voice. And it was going, Nick Rockefort is not in my life. Nick Rockefort does not live in my head. Yeah, Nick Rockefort is not in my life. Nick Rockefort does not live in my head. He's just a guy I talk to on the internet. And then in the same exact voice, okay, I heard this woman say the same thing, except she goes, he's just a guy that I sleep with, and then stuck her tongue in her mouth and go like that, and said, started talking about how hard it was, and then cried so fucking hard. I've never heard anybody cry so hard in my entire life. Because what I told her was, I said, if you want to be with Nick Rockefort, then just be with Nick Rockefort. I said, by the time I get you out of sex trafficking, then I said, you're going to end up with somebody like Nick Rockefort, and then you're just going to be just as bad off. So I don't know why I felt like that, but just the way they made me feel about him, it really wasn't in me to feel like that about Nick Rockefort. But for some reason, they put that into me. They made me feel things. But what I'm saying is okay, so as soon as that happened, then I took my phone and I go, okay, well, no, I started thinking, and I go, okay, so what do I do in this situation where, you know, like, oh, she goes, why won't they? All of a sudden, this is the craziest part. I felt like a shock of lightning that just went through me, and it was all of their jealousy, like, just I could just feel it all. You know what I mean? It was like, oh my god. And then as soon as she said that, as soon as I felt that, then she goes, why won't they leave me alone? And it was all of my disciples who were working their own angles, and I have no idea what made me want to feel that way about them, but it may have been the way that she was feeling about it, that somehow they wanted me to feel that. Either way, it was a terrible feeling, but there was one other, see, as soon as that happened, then I go, okay, well, she goes, why won't they leave me alone? And I started thinking, well, why won't they leave her alone? You know what I mean? And one of the things that I thought of was that Zeus had stated that men and women are mutual enemies. And I was thinking, because I was thinking I had been so programmed to be obsessed, the only fucking thing on my mind was, oh, well, if I'm mean to her, then that means she likes me. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, that's good. Well, what I'm trying to say is that I said, I sent them a message that said, well, that means that we're mutual enemies, because then I'm mean to you and then you like me, and then essentially that's what's making them like you. You know what I mean? Is because they can see that you like me. You know what I mean? And that was the feeling I had. Was like somebody was stalking and hacking her phone and like gonna find out. You know what I mean? Well, as soon as that happened, there was a guy in the room, and as soon as I sent that message, he goes, "Be mean to him." You know what I mean? Like yelled it, and I was sitting there going, it was so loud. Like the way that he yelled at her was so fucking loud. You know what I mean? Like this dude was bossing her around. You know what I mean? And so it was just at that point, the boys told me just to leave. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna leave. I didn't know what to do, and anything that I could think of would have probably ended up with somebody getting hurt. But there was another situation where I went to Manhattan Beach Motel, and I sent her where I was located. I don't know why, but I think I gave her my exact room number. They wound up in the room immediately above me, and I was worried about what was going on one night, and I sent a message to Riff Raff, who's been chosen as a disciple by whatever that is, and he was literally there within like 3 minutes. You know, they made me feel like it was a rapist coming in. I don't know what the hell that was, but I think everything at that point had to be kind of screwed up. One of the things, there was another incident where I sent her a message and I said, get in touch with me or come get near me, you know, and I said, and I'll take you to a some kind of rehab or something like that. And I was just trying to think of something, you know. I was like, can I get her, you know, into a safe location away from that long enough for them to let her go and kind of back off, you know. And I was also thinking from the perspective of a sex trafficker. I was like, you know, what if I wanted somebody to, you know, to get them out, you know what I mean? But I was just basically thinking, you know, there's no way to really, you know, get it accomplished. For some reason I was thinking these things, but but I told her, I said, drive near me, you know, and so she showed up on the road, actually, not long after all that. I mean, within my general vicinity. And what was so weird about it, there was one woman who drove past. She looked incredibly scared. You know, she was in the exact same car. They were all driving these white, like Honda Accords or something like this. The first one drove by looking terrified. The second one, I had sent her messages on OnlyFans saying, don't don't look at me if I can't see you, or something like this. I don't know why. And when I finally saw her, they told me, you know, look, she's over here. And then she looked away. You know what I mean? Like, as if she had gotten those messages, you know. And then that woman I saw repeatedly. She had a really massive head. It looked like, because here's the thing, that's supposed to be some kind of Jesus Christ person as well. Like a little bit of a Jesus Christ, quote unquote. That's what they refer to it as. Because it goes into marriage, but another thing is that it needed everything to be fucked up, because on all of her posted material online, it's always something between her and a Mexican, or, you know, there's Mexicans around or something like this, because they wanted to, at the end of that day I went to jail, and they wanted to get me into a situation with this woman that would achieve two things at once. One, you know, be the double crucifixion, because, you know, our bargain of marriage is, Christ's commands on marriage was a bargain with our primitive urges of sexual dominion. And so there's, because it's between two people, then it has to be two Jesus Christ. There's something about that in there, but it doesn't say she's an outright Jesus Christ. So she's a little bit of a Jesus Christ. That's what they said. Okay. Which is confusing enough for me as well. I apologize. But, you know, as far as everything like that is concerned, then, yeah, I don't exactly know what happened out there. There was an incident where I was over at a Hotel Irwin, which is where I found people with tape on their license plates. And there was a woman in there who was speaking. The voice in my head was actually her, and she was screaming. So the voice sounded calm, but in there it sounded frantic. I don't know what to say. I think of all of it, but they're accomplishing a couple things at the same time. Probably those women worked their way out of sex trafficking somehow. You know what I mean? The last time I saw her, she was driving a car, and the first time it was with somebody who wasn't desirable, and the second time it wasn't with somebody who at least had like a nice car. You know what I mean? I don't know if that means that it worked them out of sex trafficking, or what the fuck they did. You know what I mean? Because after all of that, I really felt pissed off, because I was like, the only fucking thing I got out of this was traumatized. You know what I mean? Like, I literally went in there and it was like, holy shit, what the fuck is that? You know? I guess these motherfuckers found her. You know? I guess the disciples or whatever, I guess they figured out who the fuck she was. Which is another insane thing, because I don't even know if the woman that I heard in there the last time, if it even was her. It didn't even really sound like her. It just sounded like somebody who was crying, you know, with somebody who was way older than her screaming at her, you know, telling her, and that's just weird. You know what I mean? That's just, it's definitely some type of sex trafficking. So.